what if I'm really not that great? What if I really don't have it? You know, Carrie, your personal development stuff is really great and all that, but I really think that anybody can do that, so you need to put that to the side and focus only on business. You know, Carrie, you can't always be perfect. How many people have heard anything like that from people in your world? Maybe even in your world up here. Yes, we've all had that. So that's what we're going to talk about today, dream stealers, and which are the top 3 barriers to getting anything you want in life. And these are sneaky little things because I'm not talking about, well, they're going to seem obvious. You're going to notice that the top 3 sound familiar, but I'm really going to encourage you to not suddenly jump to the conclusion, well, I already know this, because we're going to take a different spin on it, and I guarantee there's something in here that you're still secretly doing and maybe not telling other people that you're doing. So, and we're going to go backwards. We're going to work backwards because we're going to leave the top one for you to wonder. The first one, I call it friends, family, and Facebook. Yep, friends, family, and Facebook, which is really like your colleagues or your other things or the people who are your acquaintances. But I'm not talking about just the ones that are obvious, that tell you can't do it or whatever. I'm talking about the ones that sort of secretly sneak in there, like the one I said, you know, Carrie. That was, believe it or not, that was a coach. Yep, and so I can't believe she said it, but you know, in her infinite wisdom, she was trying to help. But sometimes they secretly sneak in like that where you aren't really sure. Well, they're trying to help you. They're trying to keep you safe. They're trying to encourage you. They're trying to put you on the right track. But that's just it. They're trying. They don't really know you and what you're capable of. And they want to keep you safe, so they're trying to keep you in this zone rather than encouraging you. So I think there's 3 things that you can do with that. You can either ignore it, and for some of them that are obvious, who cares? Whatever, you can ignore that. But the second response you can have is you can actually have a hard conversation with people, because sometimes they really are our friends and our family, and we don't just want to reject them out of turn. They're trying to help us, but we know that that's not supportive and helpful to us, so you can have a hard conversation with people. And 3, you can just cut them the hell out. And so, obviously, this one being a coach, I want somebody who stands in the gap with me, who helps me, who encourages me, and doesn't just defeat me. Because here's the truth, and I thought about it for a minute, and I thought to myself, maybe I should think about that. Maybe she's right. So I thought about it, and I said, hell no. Because think about this. Everybody's heard of Tony Robbins, but also if anybody's ever heard of Jim Rohn or John Maxwell, or let's talk about, I can't remember his last name, Tony, I can never say it, Hsieh or whatever, who started Zappos. And all of these companies who have transformed the way we not only do business, but the way that we experience life or experience the world. And he's gone on to speak and do other things and encourage people and support dreams. Imagine if those people never did those things. So I said, hell no, she's cut out, that's it. So I would encourage you to ask, where is it in your world that these little secret things are sneaking in? Because you may not realize it at the time, but it eventually starts to build up and build up and build up. And these start to turn from their thoughts and their comments into your thoughts and your comments, and begins to become a habit. The second one we have all heard of, but I'm going to completely approach it differently, and that is failure. Failure, of course, well, duh, failure. But I'm not talking about any kind of failure. What I'm talking about is habitual, that becomes sort of the, quote, self-fulfilling prophecy, the one that turns into a habit. Because you set yourself up for failure from the beginning. I had a client like this who used to create, well, I almost think the list could be as long or as tall or as wide as this room of things to do for the day. What was interesting is when I said to her, why don't you, and by the way, I've done this, I'm calling bullshit on myself because I've done this very thing, and it was an interesting task, which is why I had her do this. I had her go through it and look and write down what's the real time that would actually take to accomplish. Anybody want to guess how much shit was on her list? How many, I'm not talking hours. Anyone can guess how many days of stuff was on there? 2.5 days worth of stuff. When you do that and you do it over and over and over every day, and then you just carry it over and you carry it over, what you're training your brain is for failure. You're training yourself to become comfortable with failure, which I call BS on. So what's an alternative to doing that? Well, it's super simple. This is just one idea. But what I had her do was I said, start with the number one thing every single day that'll move the needle. If you just do that one thing, and then everything else is literally just a bonus. It's just gravy on top of that. If you get that one single thing done, you've already set yourself up for success. Because it's the one thing that's going to most move your business, or it could be in your career, or it could even be in your life. What's the number one most important thing you need to do that day? You've already won. So everything else is a bonus. That way, you're not training yourself for failure, you're training yourself for success. Sometimes, and I've heard a story like this too, where there was a person who kept this may sound familiar to some, joining every program, signing up for every course, signing up for everything, but they never finished a damn thing. Now, I'm not saying you have to finish everything, because you may get a piece out of that's that good, but usually they haven't even hit the digital to listen to anything, or cracked open the book, or whatever it was. And what they've done is every single time you fail, you condition yourself over and over to fail. It's kind of like a brain hack, but it's like conditioning. Number 3, and that's the big one. Well, actually number 1, because we were going backwards. So number 1, what's the number 1 thing? And we hear it all the time. But if we hear it all the time, where are we still dealing with it? Fear. You're like, oh brother, we're going to talk about that. Yes, we are. But we're not going to talk about how everybody else talks about it. Because of course you hear fear. What do they tell you? Feel the fear and do it anyway. Yeah, no shit. Okay? Yeah, exactly. How are you supposed to do that? Or, well, just don't focus on that. That's really great, except when it's pounding in. And a lot of times the fear is secret fear that we really don't even admit to other people. So it starts to eat away at you over and over and over again. So what I say though is this. Think about this. Fear is actually good. We are created to have a certain level of fear because there's an instinctual need to protect ourselves. That's where fear generates and starts from, is this. So fear can be good, and you can actually use fear. Because what is fear? Fear is energy. Fear creates friction, and friction creates energy, and energy gets you into action. So it's not about being fearless, which I completely hate. That's the other one. Oh, let's just be fearless. Oh, great, wonderful. Just exactly how is that supposed to happen? Because you're wired to have some of this fear. And fear can show up in many ways. It can be resistance, procrastination. It can be the perfection pit. It can be so many different things. But how do we utilize that energy? How do we turn that into something we can actually use? Here's just, I might have a couple ideas, but here's one. If it's really terrifying for you, the question is it too big? Because that's one of the things that people do is and I always talk about thinking big. Absolutely. You want to think big, you want to have big goals, you want to have big dreams, but if it's too big, it overwhelms you, it overwhelms the brain, and you'll never even get into action. So you have to start small. Think big, sure, but until we activate these smaller actions and break them into something that's palatable, that doesn't terrify the hell out of us and completely paralyze you from moving to that next step, that's one way. Another way, and here's one of my favorite things to do. Isn't it always easier to do something that you're scared to do? Think about when you were a little kid. Did you like to go and do it alone, or did you have somebody with you sometimes? Wasn't it just easier? Maybe even sometimes some people get into trouble doing things with other people that they shouldn't, but it's always less scary, less terrifying when you do it with somebody else. Like when you're going to learn to jump in the deep end of the pool and you just keep moving back and back to the back of the line until somebody says, it's okay, you can come with me. Yes, that was my personal experience. So I call it a brave buddy. Get yourself a brave buddy. And this may even look like a brave group, because a buddy is great, but you can also turn it into like a mastermind group or something where it's a safe place that you can just be and talk about the truth, and that they can help you go and do it with you. I call it success teams. Success teams are great because they support each other's dreams. They help stand in the gap with you so that you're not alone. And I'm going to leave you, as we're getting down to the time, so I'm going to leave you with one thought too. No matter, actually, two thoughts. Here's the thing. There are 3 stages to this whole process. Awareness is just one, and that's why we never, ever seem to find solutions to this, is because we've just become aware. Information is just information. Without action, which is the second step, you have to be able to activate that. You have to get into action. That's why the small little steps, even if it's a 0.5% moving forward or 1% moving forward, and I call it the 1% solution, you will move in that direction. And the third stage is automatic. How does it become automatic? Conditioning, over and over and over. How do you build a muscle? You go and work out once? No, you do it over and over. That's why we have not really effectively, and that's why a lot of them, what they're telling you is great, but until you condition it over and over and over and over and over again to where it becomes automatic, so you go from awareness to action to automatic. And then finally, I never like to leave this out because this is so important. I don't care what you want, what you think will fulfill you, whatever it is, if you don't wrap that up in what God has designed you to do, what you were uniquely created to give back to the world, to do in the world, to express yourself, nothing you do will work. You'll fall flat, you will feel unfulfilled. That's why I've seen so many people that have come to me and they won't really tell other people because they look successful, but what they'll say is this really all there is? You get to the top of that ladder and you say, there has to be something more than this. There has to be something more. And because they haven't figured out how to fulfill their soul, because they haven't really stepped into what they were designed and created to. And there are seasons. And I'm going to leave you with that.
Awesome.